There are some must-add players on this week's waiver wire who could actually make a difference the rest of the season, not just to fill a spot for 1 week. One wide receiver has quietly been putting up top 10 numbers over the last month. Another rookie wideout just took advantage of injuries to carve out real volume. And there's a running back who's seen just enough work to matter on a good offense if things continue to break his way. Let's start with the guy who's been producing like a fantasy wide receiver 1 over the last 4 weeks, and that's Alec Pierce. Now, the Colts are on bye this week, so keep that in mind, but Pierce is worth picking up regardless. He's my #1 waiver wire pickup this week. Tough matchup against the Falcons on Sunday, but if you watched my green light, yellow light, red light matchup video over the weekend, you probably started him. He had another 84 yards and a touchdown early on Sunday, and he now has the 10th most fantasy points among wide receivers over the last 4 weeks. He's now averaging 91.5 receiving yards during that span. Tyler Warren, he did lead the Colts with 10 targets, but Pierce led the wide receivers with a 27% target share, which is coming after a 13 target game in week 9. And in that 4-game span, by the way, Pierce leads the Colts with 8.3 targets per game, with Pittman coming in at a close second at 8. Now, over this recent 4-game stretch, he has that slight edge on target share, but it's about a little bit higher than 25%, somewhat close to Pittman. But here's the difference. Pierce owns 57% of the Colts' air yards over that span. Pittman's just at 21%. So there's a big difference in the weighted opportunity because of those targets down the field. He's commanding 48% of their air yards on the season. I'm not just talking about the last 4 weeks, okay? That's the 4th highest in the NFL. And he also ranks 5th among all wide receivers in weighted opportunity across the last 4 weeks. And the 4 wide receivers ahead of him in weighted opportunity combined for 8 touchdowns in this same stretch in the last 4 weeks. Pierce has 1 right now, right? So last year he had 7 touchdowns on a much worse offense. So with this role, this kind of deep usage, the touchdowns are going to come. He is rostered a little bit more than 50%, but he's available in way too many leagues. So just make sure to check your waiver wire to see if he is available. Same thing for the next guy, Parker Washington. Roster a little bit over 50%, but still available on a lot of waiver wires for whatever reason. Maybe you got scared off with the Jacoby Myers trade. I don't know. But there were a lot of eyes on him coming into the week with the extra opportunity, right? No Brian Thomas Jr., no Travis Hunter, Jacoby Myers ramping up. And Myers, he did lead the team in receiving yards in his first game as a Jaguar. It wasn't much, but, his role is going to continue to grow. But Parker Washington still led with a 30% target share, right? 94% route participation. He ran the most routes of any wide receiver in this game. And as promised, he was still the primary slot receiver. And if Brian Thomas returns soon, maybe this week, I don't know, it's a high ankle sprain, so it could take longer. I think Washington, regardless, is still going to be that slot receiver until Travis Hunter is back. Washington ended up scoring a touchdown through the air in a tough matchup and on special teams in this game on an awesome punt return. So I would continue to start him as a wide receiver 3 for now, even if BTJ returns. He caught 8 for 90 2 weeks ago in a game that Brian Thomas Jr. basically played the entire game. If he's not available, maybe Tez Johnson's available. He's literally doing exactly what Jalen McMillan did last season. He stepped in because of injuries. Both these guys just started catching touchdowns. Both these guys, right? Tez Johnson just caught 2 touchdowns this past week, 4 catches for 42 yards on 5 targets. He's had 4 touchdowns now in 4 weeks. Less than 7 targets per game though, right? So you got to temper expectations. The floor isn't that high, but I'm willing to continue to ride the hot hand here, ride the chemistry that he's building with Baker Mayfield. And who knows when Chris Godwin will be back? And even if he is back, who knows what kind of impact he's going to make. But regardless, Tez Johnson this week is going to be a wide receiver 3 in my rankings. Next up is Luther Burden. DJ Moore's banged up with a shoulder injury. He left the game. Luther Burden started to do his thing. He ran 20 routes, 50% route participation, which is what you want to see. That's awesome. He saw 3 targets. He caught all of them for 51 yards. He looks great out there, okay? Now, DJ Moore did return to the game, but then he left the game again late and Burden came back in. So no idea the severity here for DJ Moore. I would monitor this because if Moore does miss time, I'd love for Burden to be in my lineup in his place. I wouldn't spend up because there's a scenario that Moore returns, but I would pick him up for the scenario that Moore misses. Some other wide receivers that you can pick up if these guys aren't available, Christian Watson. You got Romeo Doubs dealing with a chest injury. Either way, Christian Watson is the primary downfield target for Jordan Love, and these two are going to connect at some point for a long touchdown. And it could be this week against the Giants because they play the 6th highest rate of single high safety coverage. So if you need a desperate streamer, I think Watson's your guy. And by the way, I didn't have Dontavian Wicks here, but he's probably someone you can stream as well, especially if Romeo Doubs has to miss a game. had 8 targets last night, and he ran a route on 69% of dropbacks. But Christian Watson, was the one who ended up running the most routes of any Packers wide receiver in this game against the Eagles. So, he would be my preferred pickup. Darius Slayton is someone you can pick up as well. We'll see if Jackson Dart ends up playing this week. And Darius Slayton himself left the game for a bit with a hamstring issue, but ended up coming back in. 5 for 62 in week 9, 4 for 89 on Sunday. He should be rostered. A guy who I have no idea if he should be rostered or not is Jerry Jeudy. I have no idea if this performance was real or not, but it's something to say that Jeudy came out of the bye with his best game of the season. Could it have been intentional, right? I don't know. 6 catches for 78 yards and a touchdown on 12 targets. So we'll see. I don't believe it until I see it, a little more of it, but if Judy's available, and he is in 40% of leagues on Sleeper, I'm going to pick him up. If you're desperate enough, Mac Hollins, right? He led the Patriots in routes, targets, got 6 of 10 targets for 106 yards. He's playing with Drake May. Stephon Diggs had a modest game, 5 for 46 and a touchdown on 8 targets. Kyle Williams took that 1 catch to the house for a 72-yard touchdown. He had 2 targets. Without Booty, Hollins increases route participation from 52% to 83%. Kyle Williams went from a little less than 16% to 58%. So Hollins, I think, is the better short-term add in the scenario that Booty has to miss more time, and it's possible that he does. Remember, the Patriots play on Thursday night. Don't forget about Chim DK. Alec Pierce got most of the first reads from Cam Ward in the Titans game before their bye, so I'm not really sure what they want to do moving forward, right? They got 2 rookies here. Who should they prioritize? Also, Calvin Ridley, could he be coming back soon? It doesn't look like it's going to be this week, but we'll see. I don't know if I would start DK if I pick him up this week, because there's a little bit of ambiguity of who that first read is going to be, because Pierce was the main guy in the week before the bye. But it's hard to ignore the 2 fantasy performances that DK had in week 7 and week 8 before the rough game in week 9. So at least he came through with the return touchdown for you, though, if you did start him. Let's move to the running back position. And let's talk about Blake Corum, man. Very interesting usage for the Rams backfield since the bye week. Kyren Williams and Blake Corum have been taking turns and alternating every series. They're basically operating as the 3-down back when it's their turn. So Kyren starts the game. They do their drive, however long it ends. It could be 3 plays, 3 and out. It could be, a full touchdown drive, a field goal drive, whatever. Kyren's the guy. The next drive, it's going to be Blake Corum. That's what they've been doing these last 2 games. Blake Corum, however long that drive is, 3 and out, half the field, field goal, touchdown. Kyren Williams, he's been the one starting. He's been the one scoring fantasy points over the last 2 weeks because his drives have been lasting longer. One of Corum's drives on Sunday could have ended with a touchdown, and he got the goal line carry, but he was stopped on that goal line attempt, which eventually led to a Devonta Adams touchdown at the goal line. If this usage continues, Corum's going to pop for fantasy at some point. He just needs some better luck. The week before, in week 9, the same usage had the carry differential in Kyren's favor, 25-13, but Kyren's drives lasted longer, and on Kyren's drives, they're going to be tending to give Kyren the ball more on a per snap basis, if that makes sense. And this week, the differential was only 14 carries to 13 carries in Kyren's favor. This is 3 straight weeks now with at least 12 carries for Corum. So he should be rostered. He could be started as a flex play right now. So yeah, if you need a running back, he'd be somebody I'm picking up. And by the way, at the very least, he's one of the best handcuffs to roster. So he's taking a very valuable spot on your bench, but he's a very valuable bench player. Let's talk about Sean Tucker. Rashad White, still the primary Bucs running back this week, 72% snap share this past week. Sean Tucker mixed in with 9 carries and was more efficient than White was with his 10 carries. And that resulted in Sean Tucker leading the team in rushing in each of the last 2 games. Now, White got 5 targets out of the backfield. That's going to be the primary role difference between these 2 guys. But, Tucker and White now gets to go against Buffalo this week. And, the Bills defense have been pretty vulnerable to running backs this year. Devon Achane just went nuts on them. So it is possible that this duo, particularly Tucker, can have more success against them in week 11. And I would expect this game to be pretty competitive too. The real hope is that this is all a moot point and Bucky Irving is back in our lineups. But we just heard from Todd Bowles that he doesn't quite have a timetable for his return just yet. Not what we want to hear, but for now, I'd pick up Tucker either as a short-term play or a stash. And the next running back is Emari Demercado. He ended up going over 100 yards on only 7 touches. And if you've noticed, he has a little big play in him, right? He was second on the team in receiving yards behind Trey McBride in this game. And the reason why he's more of a pickup this week is because Bam Knight left the game with an ankle injury and did not return. So we are going to be playing the Cardinals running back carousel this week. Again, for the 8th straight week. Michael Carter, he did step into Knight's role on Sunday as the early down back when he went down. But, Demercado, for me, he'll be my preferred play. If Trey Benson isn't back. We've seen Demercado mix in a little bit on early downs, and he's just been more efficient with his touches. It is possible that Trey Benson is back, so maybe this is all a moot point. I want Benson to be back, but we might not find out until later this week, especially after waivers clear. So kind of have to make a call now. Next up is Tyjae Spears. It looks like he wasn't rostered in a lot of leagues through the bye. 52% roster on Sleeper right now. If you need a running back, he's provided somewhat of a floor because of his role in the receiving game. And for some people, if you're desperate enough at running back, you're just happy if your running back hits double-digit PPR points, man. I get it. I get the struggle. I understand. But he's averaging 8 carries and 3 catches over the last 3 games, and he's been making the most of his receiving opportunities in terms of yards after the catch and all that. Tough matchups coming up, but because of his opportunities in the receiving game, I think he could end up being fine, having some upside because of his own playmaking ability in most matchups. Regardless, the ceiling is somewhat limited because of the offense, but he's looked great, making guys miss, making do with what he can. Devin Singletary is still a pickup this week. Tyrone Tracy, reverted back to what we thought he would be, and he still has some ways to go. But Tracy was the primary running back for the Giants on Sunday. Singletary was still pretty involved. Singletary was also the clear goal line back. He played on all 4 of the Giants' goal line snaps and all 5 of their short yardage snaps overall. So despite Tracy running 23 routes to Singletary's 8, Singletary was the one with 3 catches for 53 yards. So you're basically looking at like 2 flex players here. And if Singletary continues to get goal line looks and, hover around 10 touches on an offense that can move the ball, he should be rostered. Believe it or not, the Giants are 14th in the NFL in offensive yards per game. We'll see how much the Brian Dable firing affects this offense, but it was Mike Kafka who was calling the plays all season. Anyway, I do think Dable is a good offensive mind, so we'll see how this affects the offense overall. Some other pickups at running back, Michael Carter. I mentioned the Cardinals running back situation earlier, but the TLDR is that Trey Benson might be back. We're not sure. Bam Knight also hurt his ankle. Carter might be the early down back for the Cardinals this week. I prefer Demercado, and if Knight is out and if Benson's back, Carter becomes a desperate option. How's that? Brian Robinson Jr. Over the last 2 weeks, B-Rob has been getting a little bit of work alongside McCaffrey in the run game. In week 9, most of the work was in the 4th quarter, with the 49ers up. This week, his touches were pretty much all early in the 2nd and early in the 3rd quarter. So, his touchdown was early in the 3rd when he got the goal line look. So, he's looked good with his touches. So he's someone you want to roster in case he continues to get some looks near the goal line on a good offense, but also because he's one of the best handcuffs in all of fantasy football. The 49ers could be realizing that Christian McCaffrey is on pace to break his own record of how many touches he's had in the season. I don't know if that's the best route to go, right, when it comes to Christian McCaffrey, right? So I can see them wanting to work in Brian Robinson a little bit more. And on this offense, even with a handful of touches, it could still be valuable. Chris Rodriguez, the Commanders deployed a bit of a split backfield on early downs between Bill Krosky, Merritt, and Chris Rodriguez. So Bill doesn't have a stranglehold on that early down role anymore. It doesn't seem to be, at least. So there's some newfound opportunity potentially for Rodriguez here. The problem is that he hurt his shoulder in this game. We're not sure to what extent. Not a must pick up, but a very interesting one if he starts to run better than Bill and his shoulder's just fine. Moving on to some tight end pickups and streamers. Cade Otton at Buffalo this week. 12 targets on Sunday, only behind Emeka Egbuka. He caught 9 of them for 82 yards. He hasn't really had one bad game since week 4. So he's somebody that you can potentially start all year long. We'll see what Chris Godwin does when he's back, if he's back. But for now, Cade Otton is that dude. Dalton Schultz at Tennessee, double-digit fantasy points in 4 of his last 5 games. Dawson Knox going up against Tampa Bay. Should be a competitive game. He'll be a full-time tight end this week with the Dalton Kincaid injury. He has a hamstring, so he's week to week, most likely not playing in week 11. David Njoku going up against Baltimore. He only played on 50% of dropbacks on Sunday. He's been banged up. I'd expect him to play a lot more this week with him getting healthier. He's been averaging, 29%, 25%, 23% targets per route run over the previous 3 games, so I think he should bounce back, even though he did score a touchdown on Sunday against the Jets. Theo Johnson going up against Green Bay. Green Bay's, believe it or not, has been a little bit vulnerable to the tight end position. 7th most fantasy points given up. Decent streamer after the game that he just had. Pretty good one. Mason Taylor going up against New England. Don't trust the situation at all. But if the offense is functional, this is a good matchup for him. And remember, Garrett Wilson is out for the next several weeks, so he could operate as the number 1 option. And Jonnu Smith against Cincinnati. Now, if you're in a deep league, you might want to consider Jonnu Smith against the league's worst team defending the tight end position by far. Remember that game when all 3 tight ends scored for Pittsburgh? The best shot to happen again this week. I see Luke Musgrave here. I don't want to pick him up after watching last night, so get him off the graphic. Greg Dulcich, I'd rather pick him up going up against Washington. Great matchup. Washington's given up the 6th most fantasy points to tight ends. Not the ideal matchup against Buffalo this past Sunday, but his route participation did jump up to 74%. So that's pretty good. And the week before, he was targeted on 25% of his routes. So with his routes going up, could see some more targets this week. Let's move to quarterbacks. Joe Flacco, must pick up regardless of the matchup if he's available. Must start option, at least until Joe Burrow is back. Going up against a single high defense, oh my God, Jamar Chase is going to go nuts. But Burrow back in a few weeks potentially? I don't know. We'll see. Aaron Rodgers going up against Cincinnati. He played a terrible game on Sunday, but what better way to get right than against Cincinnati? Tua Tagovailoa against Washington at home. He's been up and down, but there's a good chance he's up against the Commanders defense. And on the other side of the ball, Marcus Mariota at Miami because of that rushing ability. JJ McCarthy at home against Chicago. Jacoby Brissett at home against San Francisco. Geno Smith at home against Dallas. Yes, even Geno Smith can have a good game against Dallas. Brock Purdy at Arizona if he plays. Now, if he plays, I do prefer him over all these options from Mariota down on this list. So that's going to do it for this episode, guys. We'll be back for another episode this week. We'll see you guys soon. Take it easy. Peace.